Why all the demise of all these great clubs that you and I used to play in? Lavally, Lee Cafe, Bon Appetit. Why are we losing all of these great venues?
Because of the way the world has changed. Like I said earlier, we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. Sunday, I would look in the Los Angeles Times calendar section. Who's playing at the Baked Potato Monday night? Who's playing at Dante's? Who's playing at the Parisian Room? Who's the concert by the sea? Then I'd call you up and say, Jackie, Thursday night, you want to go to Dante's and see Ernie Watts? We'd write it in our date book. Nowadays, it's like you say to somebody, do you want to go Thursday night to see somebody? They're like, oh, but text me. Because the reason we did that back then is there were not that many options. That was like a highlight of your week.
Enter Talk Radio, your in to all things music.
Welcome to Jackie's Groove. Come journey with us through the rhythm of the music business with your host, Jackie Bertoni.
You don't have to put on the red light. Those days are over. You don't have to sell your body to the night. Roxanne.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Jackie's Groove. It is March the 14th. Believe it or not, this year is moving right along. Hey, guys, Wednesday, and my in-studio guest is a long time friend of mine, amazing keyboardist, and we haven't talked for a while. Saw him. He didn't see us at the last show in San Diego with George Benson, and we'll talk about that. But what we're here to talk about is his new release coming up called Jazz Outside the Box, released this March 23rd. So we're going to talk more about that and get in depth with that and be topic-driven, if you will. So with that, everybody, welcome with open arms and open ears to Jackie's Groove. David Garfield. David, welcome, brother. Long time, brother.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, man, you know what? The last time you and I played together was years ago at a great venue called Mucho Gusto in Costa Mesa, California. And that was with
I remember
Tris.
it well.
Yeah, man, it was with Tris on drums and Andrew Ford on bass. And I can't remember. That's too far back for me to remember. But what I do want to remember, and I want the audience worldwide to know about Jazz Outside the Box, your new release coming out March the 23rd. You want to take us on a road trip with that and give us the background of this new release?
Well, you know, I've been making records since the 80s and, you know, been very lucky to be involved in the heyday of the studios and studio musicians and so forth. And so recently I decided I was going to do an extended project and get in the studio and record with lots and lots of my friends and a lot of artists that I've always wanted to work with. It was kind of like a bucket list thing. And I just felt as I'm getting, you know, older in my career and as people are aging and so forth, and music's changing and there's a new generations of people. And I said, let me get in there and really go for it, you know. And so that was the inspiration for this project. Now, I started recording in the end of 2015.
Wow, 2 years over almost 3 years in the making.
Yeah, and we're still recording as we speak. It's kind of an ongoing project. The whole project's called Outside the Box, and we've been releasing songs that, you know, a few songs as they were done, and now we've put out our first volume from the project, which is actually coming out a week from Friday.
Hey, let's talk about the song we started out with, Roxanne. I want to give the genesis of that tune and who was involved on that recording.
Did you like that jazz version?
Loved it immensely. In fact, I love, you know, that's been one of my favorite songs. In fact, Paul was singing it earlier before we went on the air. Paul Berezetsky, our engineer and our COO. Tell me about that. Who was on vocals on that, please?
Well, that's Robbie Wyckoff, and It's the drummer is Joe Porcaro, the father of the legendary Jeff Porcaro.
Jeff Porcaro, yeah.
He's 87 years old. Do you believe that?
God bless him. God bless him.
The bassist is Chuck Berghofer, who's from the original Wrecking Crew, played on all the, Nancy Sinatra, Boots Were Made for Walking, all that.
Absolutely.
Very great cast. Chuck Finley's on trumpet, Bill Champlin's on organ. But the genesis of that arrangement is we did I get asked sometimes to do some things for various organizations I'm involved in. I do a lot of giving back within, organizations, bringing in music, selectively. I do it from time to time. And I put together a band for a banquet. It's one group I'm involved with. We played, and we decided, we picked out the songs for dancing. We picked out all this classic rock stuff, and then classic rock. And then Roxanne was on the list. So we had such a fun time playing. It's always been one of my favorite songs. I came up with this crazy idea to do a jazz version.
Very cool.
And actually, I have a version that goes from jazz into rock. But in the process of doing that, we liked the jazz part of it so much, we made this first release just only a jazz version. So it doesn't change to the rock and roll. But on a later record that's coming out on this project, you'll hear that other version too, which is quite a ride to listen to it, because it takes you from jazz into rock,
And David, the release of the songs that thus far that's off this project, how have they been accepted by? First, most likely, are the musicians, the people that we know, have they reacted to it, and what the public has learned and what they have said back to you on the songs that have been released so far? Positive, negative? What's the feeling on that?
Oh, it's all incredibly positive. I played most of this disc for a friend of mine who had been the head of sales at Warner Brothers Records during their heyday, and he just his jaw was dropping. He was just telling me, what he said was, I don't want it to be taken out of context. He goes, you can just hear the money in this. And what he was talking about was the money that went into making it, because there's string sections and the quality of the studios and the mastering. It was all done by industry veterans. That was my theme, to work with industry giants and get that sound that I think you were around for that too, that there was a heyday in LA with these guys that came up, doing the Beach Boys and doing Frank Sinatra and all that stuff. And, then some of them are still around, although it's they're passing away, unfortunately,
Well, thank God, and blessings out to Hal Blaine that he finally got his fucking just due, of a legend, and the award that he won, and was bestowed on him, for all the musical hits that he recorded along with Carol Kay, and again the aforementioned by you said the Wrecking Crew, and but David, you've been around long enough. If not longer than we want to admit, but just your background, your playing, your styles, the chameleon ways about you. When I interviewed last year Lenny Castro, and brother Lenny, we talked about all the days of playing at the Baked Potato in Los Angeles, under Charisma, under Las Lobotomies. It blew him out of the water that that all came back to you. Do you remember those days like it was yesterday, pulling up on those Mondays up at the Baked Potato on Lankershim?
Well, quite honestly, it seems like a different lifetime now. I was thinking about that. I went to the Baked Potato recently to see somebody. I lived there in the 80s and the 90s. But, I mean, when I think back, I'll tell you, Jackie, when I think back on, what it used to be like, the world we've gone through a very significant change since the internet came in and personal computers. And I know younger people think I sound like out of my mind, but I mean, we used to roll around in our cars and meet people and talk on the phone, set up an appointment, and mail packages of papers and cassettes,
You dig?
I mean, it was a different way of life. And so I do remember it. It doesn't sound too far, but it's so different. That's the thing about it, that that when I think back to what it used to be like when we used sequencers before they had computers and software, before they had digital recording platforms, and we used tape. That seems like another lifetime.
Well, let's bring back the old back to new. On the new release on Jazz Outside the Box, are we playing digital? Are we playing audio? Are we going live? Are we Pro Tools? Are we Logic X? Want to share that?
Everything is done 96K, 24-bit.
Right.
I've totally surrendered to Pro Tools. There's people out there that still want to record analog and stuff like that, but it's like, God bless them. Logistically, Pro Tools is the way. It's like, that's the way that everybody is really doing the audio. Of course, there's no black and white rule, but I've gotten really familiar with Pro Tools working on this project because I've done a lot of editing. I've had to do a lot of editing. Like most of the songs start out with tracking sessions. Like on the disc you have, there's two songs on there that we tracked at Village Recorders. We had Poncho Sanchez, Joey DeLeon, Jimmy Bramley, John Pena, myself, Larry Klimas, Walt Fowler, all set up at the same time.
Oh, so you
that's kind of
live.
Old school. Yeah, it's basically live, but just to be, completely open with everybody about how we do things, there was no way to record the piano without leakage. So I used an electronic piano. Then later at Capitol Studios, I brought out the grand piano, the 9-foot Yamaha, and I overdubbed the piano. So there's a lot of stuff we do, as you know, where we go back in and replace things, but not the same as just when you've played on the original track and you go back to replay your part, you have some kind of a memory connection to the track,
Sure, absolutely.
You close your eyes and you play, and it's like you're in the room. So, I do a few things like that where I had to replace the piano with the real piano, and then I think we had a vocalist with us, and of course he came back and did more vocals, and we comped them together. And we do utilize some of the stuff like some of the tuning. We use it because, you can make things sound better. It's just about doing it to make the music sound better, as opposed to just doing it for the sake of doing it,
Hey, David, what song I was listening to yesterday, and it just brought back so many beautiful memories, and talking about Lenny Castro when Lenny lost his wife, to cancer years ago. And when you did the arrangement and production on Let's Stay Together, featuring, Michael McDonald, Don Henley, Richard Marx, Bill Chaplin, and David Pack. Do you remember that session like it was yesterday, on the tribute to Jeff? Can you believe it's been all these years that Jeff has been gone? And then the fact that you worked with Joe, who was outlived his sons, and not all of them, but it's mind bending when you think about the fact, and that I've been trying to get Joe, and I will get him on the show, because when Joe is gone, so go the stories, so go the history. I've already been blessed to have interviewed Wally Sr., Wilfredo Reyes Sr., and coming up we've got Pops, Escobedo. Because I said, again, when they go, so go the stories. And you mentioned the fact about a bucket list a little while ago. One would argue to say that you pretty much achieved most of your wishes musically and such. But to the listeners out there that don't know David, or even, the ones who do are staunch David fans, is there a bucket list that you want to share with us that you haven't achieved yet?
Well, that's a good question.
Take your time.
Yeah, there's always something I'd like to do that I haven't done,
Like?
You mean somebody that I wanted to record with, or just work with?
Both. Go, take it.
Well, I would always wanted to work with Eric Clapton. I never got to work with Eric Clapton.
Right.
And a lot of my friends have. And then also I always would love to work with Sting or Jeff Beck, I've met Jeff and hung out with him, but I've never got to play with him. And I wrote a song for him once when he was doing a record, but it was it turned out that what I wrote was unplayable for a guitar player. I just assumed he could play anything, but
guess what? It's amazing because I'm going to jump in because real quick, when I say it about the bucket list, and the fact about Clapton, I think it's like telling somebody, I've said this over and over again, what steak tastes like if you've been eating peanut butter. For those of you that haven't had the benefit of being in the studio with David Garfield, and not just because he's my guest, but he's been my long-term friend, 25 years plus. He is an amazing player. And David, I said to you earlier that I recently saw you a couple months ago at Humphreys in San Diego when you were playing with George and on the dual bill between Kenny G and George Benson. I'm sorry that we didn't get a chance to.
That was last year.
Yeah, and we were there in the audience, and we hung out with George, and we hung out with Michael O'Neill, and Liliana didn't even know that I was there. Everybody was upstairs. Ronnie Powell was babysitting Kenny because Kenny drank too much that night of his sushi and his and whatever he was drinking upstairs. But when I saw you walk out on stage and with that infamous earring hanging from your left ear, that's one thing you've never. And I said, "Ah, shit, David's on the gig," and I forgot all about the fact that Michael O'Neill, with Barbra Streisand and of course with George Benson, 20 plus years. How long with George have you been playing with him?
I joined the band in '86, so it's been 32 years on and off. I go in and out of working with them. Just because I couldn't do his schedule year after year,
right?
So a lot of travel, but I've been fortunate to work in the studio with them, and I've co-produced a bunch of stuff on Guitar Man, and I wrote a song with Smokey Robinson for him on Songs and Stories, So I've gotten to work with him in other capacities,
cool,
which has been a real blessing. And that was on my bucket list, was always to produce George, So I've been very fortunate, Jackie, because a lot of the stuff on my bucket list I've got. One of the things was to work with David Sanborn on my records, because I've tried to get David on my records for 30 years. He's a buddy of mine from St. Louis. He's older than me, but we're homies. Mm-hmm. So I finally got David on this record. He's on 2 songs, and that was a bucket list thing. In fact, he called me while he was doing his horns, and he was all into wanted to talk to me about what chord and what scale. I was like, I can't get you to work for me for 30 years, and now you're all into what you're doing. That was so crazy. In fact, he did it, then he redid it. He didn't like what he did, so he redid it a second time, and it was even better.
I want to pick that up when we come back on segment number 2, because you see how fast the segments go right now. We haven't even touched on the inner mechanics. I do want to find out more about David Sanborn and working with you, because our good friend, our mutual friend, Ray Sluss, has been on the road with him. Ricky Peterson's been on the road with him. And when we get back on that, let's talk about the fact of the old guys, meaning you, meaning me, meaning David Sanborn, that are still getting better. I mean, Michael McDonald is now 65 years old, and he has come into his voice. He's grown into the voice that has made him the icon that he is. And I say that only because he's a friend. And the fact is that we get better as we get older. I'm speaking for myself. I'm speaking for you. But what I'm going to speak for, when we come back on segment number 2 of a 1-hour interview with David Garfield, we're going to pick it up and we're going to talk more about that. Guys, Jackie Bertoni, Jackie's Groove, brought to you by Intertalk Media. Connect to all things music. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on intertalkradio.com.
Hey, this is Brian Culbertson, and you're listening to my dude, Jackie Bertoni, on Jackie's Groove.
Welcome to Jackie's Groove. Come journey with us through the rhythm of the music business with your host, Jackie Bertoni.
Hey everybody, welcome back to segment number 2 of Jackie's Groove. My name is Jackie Bertoni, and the network is called Intertalk Media. Connect to all things music. Hey guys, do me a favor. When you can't listen to my show live, and shame on you, or our other shows, shame on you, go to Google Play or Apple Music and download our easy-to-use and easy-to-navigate application, 2 words, Intertalk, Second Radio, and take me on the road with you, man, when you can't listen to us live, but you are listening live right now to an old buddy of mine, an amazing and extraordinary keyboard player by the name of David Garfield. And David, when we were on break, we were talking about the fact about Michael Paulo and all the people that we have in common. But I want to pay homage back to the song we just heard coming up with the second set. Give us the background of that tune.
Oh, boy. Horace Silver, a song from my father. That's one of the all-time jazz classics. One of the most played songs, one of the most loved songs. And, you know, Horace was a dear friend of mine. He was a mentor, and I used to hang out with him.
Did we lose you?
Years before.
No, there we go. I'm sorry. You cut out there. I thought we lost you there. Go ahead, buddy.
Oh, sorry. No, we have become very, very good friends over the last part of his life, and I wanted to record that in honor of him. So it's laden with all kinds of little clever things. Like, for example, Steely Dan has quoted Horace's song on the Ricky Don't Lose That Number is based on Horace's, bass riff. So I did this little reverse thing where I quoted the Steely Dan song in my version, and I also used Denny Diaz, who is the original guitar player from Steely Dan, on my version. And, it's got a lot of interesting little things. Randy Brecker plays trumpet, who was in Horace's band. Will Lee sings, who was also in Horace's band. So I tried to make it a real tribute to Horace, and at the same time, we actually had the drummer, John Densmore, the original drummer of The Doors, as the drummer on the song. Because John is a dear friend, and he's another one of these guys who's been around for a long time, and he's not doing much anymore. He's doing a lot of writing for, actually, he does articles in the Los Angeles Times and Rolling Stone and stuff. But he loves music, and this was a perfect chance for him to come in and do something in the studio and collaborate with me. And he had a ball, and we actually had him do the spoken word part of it, which was very Doors-esque. So it's a lot of little trivial, I guess, what would you call them, esoteric references in this arrangement, but we love how it came out.
So I was going to answer my question. Do we like this? Are you happy the way it turned out? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay it's okay to relive that, and if you're going to record, like I always use this term, if you're going to record a Beach Boys song, it's great to have the love of Brian Wilson and it's great to have the love of the Beach Boys, but you really can't duplicate a Beach Boys song unless you have the Beach Boys singing background vocals on that, or the like, and you've been dealing and working a lot with my good buddy of mine, Alex Ligertwood. He was, to me, the quintessential voice of Santana. Do you, again, we talked about Michael coming into his own voice, Michael McDonald, and so on and so forth as we get older. Don't you agree with me? And you can or cannot, but is Alex a better singer now than he ever was before? I know I'm jumping really forward on this, but I'm getting Alex to come on the show. When's the last time you hooked up with Alex? I know that was it at Bogies that you just working with him recently?
Yeah, he was with us last month, and he can't be with us tomorrow because he's overseas. He does a lot of performing in Europe, but he probably will be back with us in May. But yeah, I would, to answer your question, I would say that, it's like a fine wine that with age comes maturity and wisdom. And, there's a thing with singers and instrumentalists where they feel like when they get older, they don't feel like they have the chops or the range that they had when they were young.
Right.
But
and
they have the taste. Yeah, but they do have the taste and the wisdom. And so, yeah, I would say Alex, it gets better and better. And I would say, like we were talking about Mike McDonald and Dave Sanborn, they get better and better. Despite the fact that physically you start to go, I know Dave's 70, maybe 71 now, and I know he feels physically, limitations, especially traveling. But when it comes time to play, he really pulls out all the stops, And I've been doing some gigs with Dave recently.
Filling in for Ricky, or filling in for, or who were you playing with? Or because I know Ricky has been out with.
I was just filling in for Ricky.
Okay. When you mentioned about getting older and the traveling, I asked Michael McDonald, I said to Mike last year, we were in Newport Beach together, and I said, do you still love this, brother? And he goes, Jackie, I love this, man. He goes, I can't get enough of it. I just hate the fucking travel. As we get older, the worst place or the worst time or to be around or being out is being away from home. As the older we get, we want to stay at home. We want to be around at home. We talk about being older and getting older and being limited to health issues. We were very proud, and I was very honored to be the last interview with Al Jarreau last year. And Al was at my house.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, man. And to sit down, David, for 3.5 hours and talk to this legend I was beside myself. I'll send you the link when we get off the air of the interview. It was just so magical. And the fact is, Al said, I'm suffering from mutiny on the body. He says,
oh my God, I can just hear him saying that. Yeah,
man. He goes, and when I walk on stage, he goes, I hobble out. I'm walking like a 70-year-old, 75-year-old, 76-year-old man, but he goes, my audience is going to wait for me. But when I sing like I did with a child. And I'm kind of setting you up from this, David, because if I can revert back to September 27th, 1956 in Chicago and ask you, would you do this all over again? Would you do what you're doing to this day all over again? What changes would you make in your life today that you could have had control of growing up?
Oh gosh, I don't think I'd change anything.
Good.
There's a million things you could come up with, but I think it worked out just perfectly.
Good.
There's a lot of fate. There's a lot of things that happen, destiny, and just the way we moved a lot as a kid. I didn't like moving, but it turned out that we lived in New Jersey for 6 years, and that was a good time to live in New Jersey. And then we moved back to St. Louis, and then in St. Louis is where I got bitten by jazz and R&B and learned all that from the local musicians. And then I came to L.A., and I was very close with Carlos Vega, and I had met him through. It was all very much destiny, and to Carlos, I met the Bacaro kids and, Mike Landau, Steve Lukather, and And then, and then I watched all this stuff happen. I remember when Toto first formed and they were recording their first record. I went to the studio and they played me Hold the Line. It was just the rhythm section, no vocals. I go, that's a hit. That's a hit.
And when I interviewed Keith Howland, who the guitarist for Chicago, when he was actually Luke, he was Luke's roadie, for the lack of a better word, and we shared some great, man, and we shared some great stories, growing up. And I want to ask you a question. I don't want to make this a melancholy situation, but do you remember Jeff's funeral?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like, I remember like it was yesterday. Do you remember the line going into the amphitheater and those two Ramses speakers that were playing all of the songs that Jeff has graced his drums on, from Boz Scaggs to, and behind me was Boz Scaggs and who else was walking with him? Oh, Nicolette Larson. And, and we all, I just couldn't believe the fact that Jimmy Keltner eulogized the man. And then when everybody walked out and did the drum procession out to the gravesite, it was like yesterday. And where I was talking to somebody about that recently is the reason why I'm bringing it up right now. We're losing brothers and sisters way too young, and that's why my mom always said, Dave, if it's not health related, David, it's all bullshit. And the fact of the matter is that we have to be thankful. I mean, I listened to your tune, One Like You, the one you did with George Benson. We aforementioned talked about the Smokey Robinson tune. It's like, how old is Smokey now? I know he's still in voice also. But
Smokey's 75.
He's 75. And George Benson is how old now?
75.
Yeah. It seems to be, the fact that we are getting older. I'm 57 years old right now, and there's still so much more, I want to accomplish in life when we go, when we go forward here. I have a huge bucket list, as I said before, being on the radio, I filled one of them. But when I want to talk to you going back to the David Sanborn, I'm a huge fan of David Sanborn's Chicago song, one of the most funky tunes that was ever played with him. Ray Islas and Ricky said he was still playing that tune. Did you have the opportunity to play that tune with him when you were filling in for Ricky?
Oh yeah, we played it practically every show.
I can see David's voice. David had that crooked look on his mouth when he bit that reed when he was playing sax. And even though he's more gray in the hair now, he's still David Sanborn. For people who don't remember, David was probably the most used saxophonist on David Letterman's, and Paul Schaefer's band. He used to sit in with them all the time. Yeah, man.
Well, usually once a week. It was once a week. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say, honestly, he's still in full voice?
Oh, yeah. David's doing great, and he's got some kind of new show that he's working on. He's always coming up with something. David's in this for the music and the art. You know what I mean? David is driven by that, and I'm driven by the same thing. There's something we have in common. Coming from St. Louis, both of us, we were influenced by a lot of the same people, the same culture. And Mike McDonald as well is from St. Louis, but he was more in the rock band scene as opposed to the jazz clubs. But there was a small music circle. But what I was saying about David is that, he got into a career in music because he loved music and he loved the expression of it and the aesthetics of it. And that's what my story was too, and then I work with George, and George has a very different story. George grew up,
Benson.
He was playing Benson. But he was playing on the street in Pittsburgh at 8 years old with a ukulele, and he was, getting dimes and nickels and pennies, in his guitar case. And he was making more money than his mom was. This was back a long time ago. And so George had a connection to music early on in his life as a way of survival, as a way of making money. And he made a lot of money in music in his youth, So it's just interesting, everybody has a different angle they come from. And so for some guys like David Sanborn who were from suburbs of St. Louis, we could have been doctors or accountants, or lawyers, whatever, but, school teachers, whatever. But we were attracted to the music for the creative part of it. And that's one of the things I love about Sanborn. I love working with him And so glad he played on this record. You know, I'll tell you this real quick. Smokey, the song One Like You, I have a version on my record with Smokey singing it and Mike McDonald doing the backgrounds and Sanborn playing the sax.
Wow.
And that'll be on volume 2.
Yeah, man. You know, and I got to ask you a question. You know, being an LA boy, you know, we talked about St. Louis, we talked about Chicago and so on, but you've been out here in LA as long as I've been, Southern California. David, in your own professional opinion, I don't care if it's, you know, driven by emotion and or business, why all the demise of all these great clubs that you and I used to play in, Lava Lee Cafe, Bon Appetit? What the fuck is going on in the business? Why are we losing all of these great venues? And forget the economy side of it. What is wrong with it?
It's because of the way the world has changed. I'm glad you asked me that question, Jackie. When we were coming up, like I said earlier, we didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. Mm-hmm. You know, well, what happened? Sunday, I would look in the Los Angeles Times calendar section and see who was playing at the different clubs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Who's playing at the Baked Potato Monday night? Who's playing at Dante's? Who's playing at the Parisian Room? Who's the Concert by the Sea? I'd look and see what's going on. Then I'd call you up and say, Jackie, Thursday night, you want to go to Dante's and see, you know, Ernie Watts? And you'd say, yeah, it's okay. We'd make it we'd write it in our date book, in our paper date books. And then we'd end up meeting up. I'd pick you up or you'd pick me up. We'd meet there and we'd do it. Nowadays, it's like you say to somebody, do you want to go Thursday night to see somebody there? Like, text me, call me back, you know, nobody could, but it's a different lifestyle. It's like, because the reason we did that back then is there were not that many options. That was like a highlight of your week. So I used to have some amazing weeks. Like on Monday, I'd be at an ASCAP membership ceremony, a big gathering. And then Tuesday, I'd be at the Baked Potato playing. And then Thursday, I'd be, you know, down at Concerts by the Sea seeing McCoy Tyner with my buddy. And, and so you had this life that you structured. And now with the way our technology is, everything is so instant and so nebulous and very fleeting. And so you get a lot of people, like I'll post my gig tomorrow night at Bogies. I'm playing Bogies tomorrow with Steve Ferroni and Freddie Washington, and Liliana will be there. And
absolutely. And
what'll happen is I'll get a bunch of people saying, oh yeah, man, I wish I could be there. Oh yeah, great. And then, but people don't get in their car and go to a gig the way they used to. And that's why these clubs are not still there, you know.
You know, and I want to say one thing, you know, you and I being older, can you imagine right now at our age having to schlep our equipment up the steps behind Lava Lee? I used to play that club with Sam Riney all the time when Lenny was out with Toto. And I used to look at that series of steps and go, shit, who am I fucking kidding? Now at 57, can you imagine schlepping your pianos up? And if we couldn't afford to hire a tech to bring that up for us, you know, talk about the old meets the new. But what we're going to do from this situation right now, David, is we're coming out of segment number 2, man. I wish we had another hour, but we're gonna wrap it all up on segment number 3. We're gonna talk about David Garfield, how to stock you friendly, how to patronize you, how to purchase your music, not how to steal your music, and everything about David Garfield. So when we come back on segment number 3, you guys don't want to go anywhere. We're gonna pick it up. We're gonna talk more about what's coming up in the life of David Garfield. Jackie Bertoni, Jackie's Groove, brought to you by Intertalk Media. Connect to all things music. Segment number 3, right around the corner. Stay put. Don't move. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on intertalkradio.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Hi, this is Michael McDonald, and you're listening to my good buddy Jackie Bertoni on Jackie's Groove.
Welcome to Jackie's Groove. Come journey with us through the rhythm of the music business with your host, Jackie Bertoni.
I'm sorry, man, but when it comes to trumpet playing, man, I love nothing more than a muted trumpet sound, man. And it's we're going to find out more about that. Hey, guys, it's Jackie Bertoni, Jackie's Groove, brought to you in Talk Media, connect all things music, talking to David Garfield. And when David and I were on the break just now, you guys don't get a chance to hear us chopping it up, but we're talking about I Remember When. And David, I mentioned to you about Fran Strine, Strine, and The Hired Gun, which is currently out on Netflix, that Jackie's Groove and Intertalk Media. We had a major promotion with that, and it starred Steve Lukather and Liberty DeVito and a list of all the great players. And coming up is a new movie by Fran. It's called The Titans of Radio, which spotlights Steve Lukather and the like of all the guys in this industry that have played on 90% of the hits. And that includes David Garfield. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you may not know who David Garfield or Jackie Bertoni is or Steve Lukather growing up, but you knew the iconic groups they played with. And the fact of the matter is, we're trying to bring that back. We're trying to be a calendar. Will the music business come back as a whole? I always loved David when David called his groups David Garfield and Friends. And when I was part of that situation, when I got that call to play with David, it was an honor to be considered a friend. It's a situation we're not a standalone. We have to have that team. We have to have that ability to surround ourselves by the people in the know. And Jeff, you've been around with Jeff, and all the likes of the new players are out there right now. And of all the great drummers, I have to ask this question because David, you've always hired the best. But right now, when it comes to drums, I'm always curious, and that's a quick question asked by one of the listeners. Do you have a favorite drummer that that you love to work with? And I know it's a hard question. It's like asking who your favorite child is. But is there a favorite drummer that you like to work with?
I can't say that. I have so many favorites. Obviously Vinny Colaiuta and I are very close. He's one of my favorite drummers, favorite people to work with. But I love working with John Robinson. I love working with Greg Bissonette. Steve Ferroni is one of my favorite drummers, but I can't just say, I can't put anybody above anybody else. I love Steve Gadd. I just worked with Steve last month on my project. I mean, I've been blessed. I've played with the very best drummers in the business, I really have. Jeff Porcaro and I were in a band, and Carlos was my best friend, Carlos Vega. And, Simon Phillips and I were in a band. I mean, come on, Oscar Seaton toured with me with George for years. I mean, Ricky Lawson was one of my dear friends. And we just lost Ndugu, who I got to work with. I mean, I've been so blessed,
I know.
But I do want to touch on what you said about the movies, because I did go to a screening of Hitmen out at Ray Parker's house. I don't know if the guy you were referring to was there. Some of the
it's Fran.
People that made. Oh yeah, because there were people that made the movie there, and they wanted our input, and I actually gave them some input. I don't know if they used it. It was before the movie was done, but they were showing it to us. Lou was there, and Jay Graydon, and a few people.
Exactly.
But the thing is about that movie. What I want to tell the listeners, and I know you know this, Jackie, and it's like they started with the Funk Brothers. Standing in the Shadows of Motown was the first movie to come out. And there was quite a story behind that. They tried to get that movie made for years before it finally came out. And that was about the legendary Motown hit makers, the musicians.
Absolutely.
And what comes out when you look at that is all those musicians were jazz musicians. That's the behind-the-scenes thing.
Yeah, man.
The musicians that went into the studio in the early days of recording pop music in L.A., in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York, they were all jazz musicians. They would go in the studio and they would use their jazz sensibilities to create the rhythm parts, the rhythm sections, and so forth for what became the hits of our time,
Exactly.
And it's crazy. It's just crazy. And so first we had because they weren't credited. One of the things did you see the Wrecking Crew movie?
Of course.
Okay. So one of the things they highlighted in that is that the producers did not want the fans to know that it was Hal Blaine playing drums with the Byrds. They didn't want the fans to know that it wasn't the guy in the band. They wanted to sell the band, the image of the band and the guys in the band. So they didn't credit a lot of these musicians. And so it's interesting because I grew up in the age of reading the credits and being into the credits, but only to realize later that a lot of guys weren't credited. Now on Atlantic Records, they credited, like I used to listen to the Young Rascals, and I'd see Hubert Laws on flute. I'd see Ron Carter on cello, and I knew those names from the Rascals records, But so back to this thing, I just wanted to make this point that the jazz musicians are at the core of popular music. And so this is why I still identify as a jazz musician. This is why I still actively play jazz and love jazz, because it's really at the bottom of all this stuff that's happened. Whether it's Van Halen or whether it's Dave Grohl. I mean, I don't care who it is. The Beatles. At the core of it, in the early stages of this, there was a jazz musician that played something that influenced all this. So, I just wanted to make that point since you mentioned the movie. And I will check out the Titans of Radio. Yeah,
Titans of Radio. I'll put you in contact. In fact, I want to put you in contact right now with the CEO of Intertalk Media, Florentino Buenaventura. Florentino's a big fan of yours, and so I want to go ahead and just let's step out for a second. Florentino, say hi to David, and David, please say hi to Florentino.
Hey, David, how's it going, brother?
Great, man. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Well, actually, we've met a number of times, bro. I'm Michael O'Neill's friend. We've talked about having you on the network a few different times.
Oh, I know exactly who you are. Yeah, I remember meeting you backstage at a Benson gig.
Yeah. Over at with George, man. You guys, and so I talked to Michael yesterday, and he's in sessions today, but he wanted to send his best. Obviously, you guys probably speak more than I do, but I did get a chance to talk with him yesterday, and you're amazing. The shows that you do with George, and your history in this business, just simply amazing, man. And appreciate you coming on the network and having this good behind the scenes chat with Mr. Bertoni here.
Oh man, I'm loving it. I've been aware of the show because you told me about it. I remember seeing you, and it's wonderful to be included. And I look forward to being anytime you want to pick up the conversation. I love it. I just love it.
Perfect, man. Yeah, and got to get Stanley in here too. I love the whole band. We just you guys such consummate professionals with George's group, but of course, your own stuff. I've been on your mailing list, and I see it always come through. And it just serendipitously, I was chatting with Rick Scott, and it's like, we need to bring David on, man. Can you help us coordinate that? He's like, sure. And
that's wonderful, man.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of George, we'll be playing Humphreys. Is that close to you?
Oh, that's where we. Last time we seen you was at Humphreys.
Yeah.
We'll be back at Humphreys, I think, August 27th.
Oh, perfect. That'll be good.
You guys, we'll work it out. So if you want to do a band interview, we'll work it all out.
Yeah, definitely. We were there with you guys did the Kenny G thing, so we were backstage there, but I think we chatted more.
So here's this.
So we chatted more in
the story
Laughlin.
about the Kenny thing. The Kenny thing, when you guys were there, I was out front at the CD stand because I always go out and sell CDs and sign CDs. So I had other guests, too, that I was looking to meet, and I came backstage, and you guys were all downstairs, and I went upstairs. I totally blew it, man.
There was, definitely. I seen you kind of in passing and saying, but we chatted. We spoke more in Laughlin. Remember that gig way out in the middle of nowhere, and it was
sure.
It was a huge gig, man. That was a great crowd. It was fun. Everyone was, I didn't know what to expect because we seen like cowboys and all this, just probably the most collective, of variable people out there, man. And everyone was on their feet, like it was partying like it was a rave. So it was good times, man.
Yeah, George is, as he's not just a jazz artist or a pop artist or an R&B artist. He's even doing we do a Glenn Campbell song on the show now, and people just eat it up.
I remember that. Well, you know what? But for this one, we always want to know more about you, man. We like people to stalk you in a good way. Obviously, we want people to know more about you. Tell us URLs, websites, how they can find you. Do they need to pass notes in class to get to you to, find out how to...
No, it's real simple. Go to iTunes, David Garfield. You'll see all this stuff. You can pre-order Jazz Outside the Box there right now. Mm-hmm. Or go on Spotify, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. We're all over that stuff, just under David Garfield. You go to davidgarfield.com, and at Facebook, just go to David Garfield Music is the thing to punch up in Facebook. That'll take you to my official page.
Awesome. Well, very good, man. Well, I'm going to pass this on back to Jackie because he is the man with all the great questions. So I appreciate you coming on again. Your family now, you've been jumped in, so you can't get out. Now you're officially part of Enter Talk. And
thank you very much, man.
We'll see you at the next show, brother.
Hey, David,
awesome. Thank you very much, brother.
Florentine, I love you, and I'll talk to you later on today.
All right,
David, I want to ask this question, if I can, in the last 5 minutes. It's a question my wife came up with, and I've always been curious because she obviously you're only as strong as the person that you're with, and that's my strength. And but she came up with a great question, and I've been using this for the last year and a half. If music wasn't part of David Garfield's vocabulary, if music was not in your life at all, what would David Garfield be doing today?
I have no idea.
It's
wow.
I love that question because I asked Ray Parker. I interviewed Ray last few months ago. In fact, we've got an interview hopefully coming up. Florentino will correct me. Hopefully in the next week or so with Ray's new movie called "Who You Gonna Call," aptly named, and it's all about the life of Ray Parker Jr. But the fact is, I asked Ray, and I've asked the Ann Wilsons and the Andy Summers. And it's like I asked you, what would you be doing? And Ray Parker said he'd either be working on the line in Detroit with Ford with his father, or he'd be dead because of the area that he grew up in. And I'm always curious to find out, about that. And you were very honest by saying you don't know. But I'm going to ask you this question also. In the barometer, I'm not going to get involved with religion and politics and so on and so forth. But when you write soul-searching music, albeit instrumental or vocals. Does the state of the world have any play on what David Garfield is writing about?
No.
Okay.
I think what it boils down to is when I'm writing music, it's more about feeling than it is about thinking.
Okay.
And so, and I think, and I'm glad you asked me that question, because I think in the history of time, I think feelings don't change that much. You know what I mean? Like the way we feel as human beings, we might be tired, we might be hungry, we might be lonely, we might be angry, or whatever it is, or we might be excited or joyful, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that when you're working on music, your feelings come out. I mean, the way I do music, the kind of music I do. That's why I love jazz so much. It was a way of expressing myself. So
yeah, man.
I think that if I'm frustrated with what's going on in the world, my music might reflect the opposite. It might reflect a big sense of love and serenity and joy. You know what I mean? Because it's trying to create a place. That's the great thing about music. You can create. In fact, now that I think of it, growing up in the era that I did, that's what music did for me. I put on music; it would take me to a magical place.
Absolutely, just like a movie.
Yeah,
you know, you can walk away from your life or whatever it was for that 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or those 2 hours that you would watch a movie. You would transport yourself into a different era other than reality. You know, it's like my old friend Henry Capone always says. Reality's paradise is nice, but reality sucks. You know, and we try to make the best that we possibly can of this. You know, we talked about now in this last minute and 30 seconds. Michael Paulo, you said, you know, our relationship between Michael and myself. Michael's got a new album coming out. I played on a song called Your Song. It's a remake of Elton John's great tune, and your cohort, David Benoit, played keyboards on that. So it's a little teaser for you out there. And I'll send that information. I'll send the song to you with that. Go ahead.
Please. You have my email?
I do. Well, actually, when we get off the air, I'm going to text you from a 714 number, and I'm going to ask for your mailing address and so on and so forth. But with that said, David, you know, I wish we would have had another hour here. You know, Rick, and you know, we'll keep the doors wide open on anything that's got to do with David Garfield. Like Florentino said, you are now jumped in. You're part of the Intertalk Media family, and there's no getting away from it. So, and why would you? And you know, and all these years, man. You know. All these years, brother, that we've played and we shared the stages together, and to share your stories on the radio, I thank you, man. I thank you. I bow to your greatness, and more importantly, you're playing, man. It's getting better and better and better. And thanks to Rick Scott and to and then our mutual friend Michael O'Neill, and someone you and I used to hold in our arms. It's playing percussion with George now, Liliana de los Reyes, or my little girl Liliana. So that shows how old we are when you're now playing with the girl we used to hold in our arms. So with that said, guys, David Garfield, please stalk him professionally. Bogey's coming up in LA, and also on the Facebook, look for David Garfield. David Garfield, Jackie Bertoni, Jackie's Groove, brought to you in Talk Media, connect to all things music. David, thank you so much for being part of my show. And as I always say in closing,
thank you, Jackie.
Peace through music. David, we love you, brother.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.